Well, hello students. Welcome back to one of our videos. We are covering the geometry section of the GED test. And so we are in Unit 4, which is the geometry unit, Lesson 4. I skipped Lesson 3 because we pretty much covered the perimeter of polygons. So our objective is students will be able to find the perimeter, the circumference of circles. Now circumference just means the distance around a circle. So it's kind of like perimeter, except it's for circles. Obviously a circle doesn't have any sides, but it is closed. And the interesting thing about a circle is that it has a midpoint, and at the midpoint, the distance from the midpoint to the edge is always the same in a circle. Okay, if it wasn't the same, then it would be an ellipse. Okay, so a little bit about circles here. We want to learn how to find the circumference, okay? So before I give you the formulas for circumference, I want to give you an interesting piece to this formula, okay? And to do this, I have a little bit of a demonstration. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but I have a little piece of baling wire. And what I did is I measured it to be pretty much the exact distance of the diameter. All right? So this is the length of the diameter of this circle. And by the way, I did not draw that circle by hand. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to see how many of these diameters can go around the circle. How many do you think will go around the circle? Well, let's find out. All right, so I'm going to start right there. All right. Now I'm going to bend this a little bit. Let's see here. Obviously this is not going to be exact, but it'll be good enough for our purposes. Okay, so about right there. So about right there. That's one diameter, all right, from here to there. All right, let's continue. Now that we got this shaped already, it's going to start from right there, and it's going to end about right there. About right there. All right, so there's two diameters. 1, 2. Let's see if it'll go a third. Let's see. Oh. Oh, it goes about right there. So about right there. Wow. So we went 3 diameters plus this amount right there. How long do you think, how many diameters do you think that is? That little space right there. It's a very, very small fraction of one diameter, right? Maybe 0.1 or 0.2 diameters. Okay, so this forms a very important number in geometry. Okay, so a circle, any circle, is a little more than 3 diameters. Let me say that again. Let me say that a different way. The circumference of any circle is just a little bit more than 3 diameters, say like 3.1 or 3.2, something like that. Does that number sound familiar? Well, that number actually is an irrational number. The distance, this little space right here is about 0.1415926 ... That's how many diameters this little spot is. So if you put them all together, you have 1, 2, 3 plus this, you get the circumference of a circle is approximately 3 and this many diameters, 0.1415926 dot dot dot. That means it goes on forever, and there is no pattern. That's what we call an irrational number. The decimal never terminates, and it has no pattern. Does that number look familiar to you, 3.1415926? Well, usually we just reduce it, not reduce it, but round it to 3.14, which is the number that we call pi. So the circumference is about 3.14 diameters. Right, so I'll just put lowercase d. Actually, usually we use a capital D, I believe. Okay, that's all the circumference is. It's about 3.14 diameters. So we can write this more exact. We can write it as C, the circumference, equals pi d. Pi diameters. Okay? So now you kind of know where the number pi comes from. Okay, we use pi whenever we're dealing with circles. Okay, anything that has diameters. Okay, so that's diameter. There's something else that you need to know about a circle. If I was to go from the midpoint to the edge of the circle, do you know what that is called? Well, that would be the radius. The radius. So notice that the radius is just half of a diameter, right? So radius is 1/2 the diameter. Also, I could say that the diameter is 2 times the radius. Okay, so there's another way we write this sometimes. Instead of saying pi d, a lot of times, instead of giving you the diameter, they'll just give you the radius. And just to sort of cover that situation, you could also say that the circumference equals pi times the diameter. So we know that the diameter equals 2 radiuses, right? Radius. 2 times the radius. So if I want to put this in terms in terms of radius, I would say circumference equals pi r, but I need 2 r's to make 1 diameter. So I'd write it like that. Those are my 2 formulas that I can use to find the circumference of a circle. All right? So I'll leave that formula up there. I'll erase everything else. And we're going to try a couple problems. All right. So let's do example 1. So let's say that we have a circle has a radius of, what do you think it is? Let's just say 4 inches. Find the circumference. Circumference. I hope that's how you spell circumference. Okay, so all we need to know is our formula. And on a GED test, you should have this formula available to you. But just in case you forget, you remember how we came up with it. Okay, so we have, which one are we going to use? Pi d or 2 pi r? Well, in this case, we're given the radius. So let's go ahead and use 2 pi r. Okay, so I have circumference. By the way, I'm going to write out the formula. You want to know why? Because I want to memorize it. The reason why students don't memorize these important formulas is because they never write them down. So take the extra second and just write the formula down for each problem. And that's how you'll remember it. Circumference equals 2 pi r. Okay. So 2 is just a constant. We can keep him the same. Pi is also a constant. So we'll just leave it in terms of pi for now. And then we have r, which is the radius, which was given. All right, so we just have to multiply that by 4. Okay, so now we have 2 times pi times 4. So we can multiply these in any order that we want. I think it's better to start with the 2 constants. So 2 times 4 is 8. So you get 8 pi. All right. So let's say that on the test they asked you, hey, what is their circumference in terms of pi? If that was their question, this would be the answer. I would just leave pi there. Okay, but if they asked, what is the circumference rounded to the nearest hundredth of a decimal point, then we would know we need to actually round this, this pi. All right, so we have 8 times pi. So what is 8 times pi? Well, let's see. 3.14 times 8. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 1 is 1. Or excuse me, 8 plus 3 is 11. It's 24, 25. All right. I have 2 numbers to the right of my decimal, the 1 and the 4. So I got to move these 2 in from to the right. So I get about 25.12. Circumference equals 25.12. Now the question is, by the way, that is rounded. If you did this on your calculator, you would get a lot of different numbers there. And in fact, it would be best if we didn't, because if this ends up being like a 5 or a 6 right there, that would cause that to be a 3. Just so you know that. All right, so we'll just go ahead and stick with this. 25.12, now what's the units for that? Well, these are inches. It's just about 25 inches all the way around. Remember, a number without a unit is almost always meaningless. So make sure you know your units. Okay? So fairly straightforward. As long as you know the formula, you'll know how to do this, as long as you know how to multiply. Or if you have a calculator. Okay, let's do one more example, and this time I'm going to give you the circumference and ask you to find the radius. They'll also try to give you questions like this a lot of times on tests. So let's say a circle has a radius of, let's see, I'm sorry, not a radius, a circumference of, let's say 50 inches. Find the radius. Okay. Again, they gave us a radius. If they were to give us diameter, we would use this formula here. But since they gave us radius, we'll go ahead and use this one. And I think that usually it's in terms of radius. Okay, so let's take a look. How do I do this? Well, I got my formula. C equals 2 pi r. So I know what C is. It's 50. Of course, 2 and pi are constants. Now I need r. So I only have one unknown. Okay, so I just go ahead and put these values in. So C is 50. 2 is 2, pi is pi. R is, well, we don't know what R is, so we'll leave it as an R. Okay, now what I need to do is I'm trying to solve for R. These are all multiplied. This is 2 times pi times R, so I need to understand what's the inverse of multiplication. Well, the inverse of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide by 2 pi, because I want to get rid of the 2 and the pi. But again, I got to do that to both sides. So I end up with, on the left-hand side here, I end up with 50 over 2 pi equals R. Okay? Now, here's where calculators are very nice. I didn't bring my calculator today, though, so I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, 2 pi. What's 2 pi? This is 2 times pi. Well, just approximating here, 3.14 times 2. That's 2 pi. And let's see, it's going to be about 6, huh? Actually, it's going to be 6.28, because if you double 14, it's 28. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Move my decimal in 2 places. 6.28. So my radius is approximately equal to 50 divided by 6.28. All right? So now I got to deal with this division here with a decimal, which is good review. How do you divide with decimals? Well, let's give it a try. Okay, 50 divided by 6.28. So this is 6.28 into 50. All right, whenever I have, this is called my divisor out here. Whenever I have a decimal in the divisor, I want to get rid of the decimal. And I can simply get rid of decimals by multiplying by factors of 10. Each decimal point is a factor, a multiple of 10. So if I were to multiply this by 10, I'd get 62.8. If I were to multiply it by 100, I'd get 628. So I'm just going to multiply the divisor by 100 and the dividend by 100. Essentially, I'm just going to move my decimals 2 places to the right. Okay, so this actually is 50.00, right? So I'm going to go ahead and move this guy over 2 places, 1, 2, so he becomes 628. And now I got to move him over 2 places, 1, 2, so he becomes, the decimal's right there. So if I need to add 1 decimal, I can do that. All right, so how many times does 628 go into, well, it won't go into 500, will it? How many times will 628 go into 5,000? It's a little bit tricky, huh? Here's a little trick you can use. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of those 2 numbers and those 2 numbers. How many times will 6 go into 50? That's what, 8? 6 times 8 is 48. So approximately 8, however, that's 20. So I'm going to say 7, because this is a little bit over 6, right? I'm going to say 7. I might be wrong. Very well could be wrong. I have not done this ahead of time. 7 times 8 is 56. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 5 is 19. 42, 43. Okay, and my result is, let's see if I got it right. That cancels. So these are just going to become 9s. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 9 is 0. 9 minus 3 is 6. So look at that. Oop, that's 4. 604. I'm just under 628. That remainder has got to be less than the divisor. Okay, so let's say I want to go 1 more decimal point. Well, since this number is very close to this, I'm thinking it's going to be like an 8 or a 9. I'm going to go with 9, just to see. Okay, 9 times 8 is 72. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 7 is 25. 9 times 6 is 54, 56. Okay, I did something wrong. I forgot to bring down that 0, didn't I? So that's a 2, that's a 5. You gotta bring down your 0. If you're gonna put a number up there, you gotta bring down your 0. Okay, so 9 times 8, 9 times 6 is 54, 56. Hey, look at that. So, I'm good to go on that. That's 8. A lot of intense subtraction here, huh? Is that 8, 9, 388? So this is where you're probably going to use a calculator. Okay, so about 7.9. So the radius is going to be approximately 7.9. 7.9, and that's going to be inches. All right? So if you're given the radius, you can find the circumference. If you're given the circumference, you can find the radius. And it's very nice to have a calculator so you can avoid some of these calculations. But hey, this is really good review for us. So if you like this video, actually make sure you subscribe to it so you can get notified of any new videos that I make. Until then, may God richly bless you.